Look at this beauty. This is not a UFO parade or aliens landing to take over the Earth. They're just Starlink satellites. How do they not crash into each other? Currently, the company has launched 1,469 satellites that orbit over the United States and South America. Elon Musk's announced goal of 42,000 satellites is 8 times more than the current number of satellites in Earth orbit. Mind you, they will have to be replaced every 5 years. That is, every 5 years, 42,000 new pieces of metal will appear around the Earth, and the old ones, deactivated, will continue to fly, eventually gradually burning up in the atmosphere. At least people hope they will. Of course, there is a belief that satellites and debris below 370 miles will descend from orbit within a few years due to atmospheric resistance, greatly reducing the possibility of the Kessler effect. But some of them may never lose orbit. The system of their passive withdrawal has not yet been tested, and if some of the satellites crash into each other, given their huge number, the consequences for astronautics can be completely unpredictable. It would seem that a small man-made junk can't cause much damage, lost bolts or pieces of plastic. But here's an example of the damage. The photo shows the result of accidental contact between the 4-inch thick aluminum skin of the ISS and a piece of plastic at a speed of 4 miles per second. Or if you convert it into a car format, it's just 15,600 miles per hour. And here is a fragment of a 1.5-inch skin, scratched tangentially with an M8 bolt, flying in space at a speed of 3.7 miles per second. And if the bolt was moving at a speed of 6.2 miles per second, its direct contact with the ISS or satellite would be equivalent to an explosion of an anti-tank projectile. The scale of the problems that space junk flying at hypersonic speed can cause is shown in the movie Gravity, and judging by the photos of the ISS holes, this is not such a big exaggeration. The pessimistic scenario is this: we will simply find ourselves prisoners on our own planet. Space exploration will be out of question. After all, 5 years ago, in 2017, the US government recorded 308,984 potential collisions with space debris, 655 of which were emergencies. That is, they were urgently reported to satellite operators so that they could avoid a catastrophe by transferring their satellite to another orbit. This is almost 2 emergencies a day. There are now 34,000 large pieces of space debris with a diameter of more than 4 inches in orbit. Imagine that their number may double or triple in the coming years by the efforts of one company. In an interview with Gwynne Shotwell, president of Starlink, investor Ron Barron asked her this question: how are you going to deal with it? How can you guarantee that they won't collide with other satellites? Her answer was, imagine 30,000 people on Earth, distributed quite evenly. You can spend your whole life like this and never see another person. Brilliant. Except people don't move at a speed of 15,000 miles per hour, and Starlink satellites constantly cross each other's path. This is already happening, almost every night, and it is visible to the naked eye. Here's more news. Last December, the European Space Agency accused SpaceX of a monopoly in space. This is an amazing situation. One person owns half of the active satellites in the world. Effectively, he sets the rules. The rest of the world, including Europe, simply doesn't have time to react quickly. This was said by Joseph Aschbacher, head of the European Space Agency. And another thing, at the end of 2021, the Chinese authorities filed a complaint with the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs about Starlink. Their space station had to dodge satellites twice in a year. 2 Starlink satellites almost rammed China's new space station, which began construction in April 2021. The Chinese equivalent of the ISS should be fully functional in 2022. After that, Chinese users in social media massively criticized Elon Musk's project, calling it a pile of space debris and American space weapons. Speaking about weapons, this is a really big question. Can all the terminals, this man-made swarm of satellite bees, be reprogrammed into what the military needs in mere minutes? A global radar, for example? A surveillance system, for example, that can change the trajectory of flywheel cruise missiles. Also, Starlink will harm astronomy. It already does. Try to film a time-lapse of the night sky in the USA. You'll see this. This harms not only amateur astronomers, but also observatories. It has already become much more difficult to observe the stars. A large smeared spot of flying Starlinks appears in the footage every now and then. For example, here's an image taken by the Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory in Chile. And this is only 1,500 satellites that are already interfering with detecting asteroids flying past the Earth. There are already studies on this topic. And the plans, as we know, are to increase this number, 1,500 satellites, by about 30 times. Starlink is kind of like a revolutionary technology that will deliver good internet to all corners of the planet. But, back in the 1990s, several well-funded enterprises tried to create their constellations from hundreds and thousands of satellites, including the company Teledesic, supported by Bill Gates. There was talk of a new space race and changing the world through widespread satellite connection. But by the early 2000s, all these projects either went bankrupt or changed their plans. They realized that the costs were too high, and the final product was not popular anywhere, except for fishing boats and oil rigs. Two companies, Iridium and Globalstar, were able to survive to this day. They had to greatly reduce the number of satellites and sell their expensive services to large clients, traders, and emergency services. But even today, these companies are actively losing money. For example, Iridium, created by Motorola in 1997, is now losing $60 million every year. They have 66 active satellites, also in low orbit, although higher than Starlink, 480 miles. In general, technologies similar to Starlink were available to us back in the 90s, but turned out to be of no use to anyone. On the other hand, the world and the market are changing. Maybe now is the time for them? Maybe 42,000 satellites instead of 4, visibility in the sky and a great influence on the surrounding space are not bugs, but features? After all, this is what allows the project to differ from all competitors who quietly implement the same service and call it groundbreaking. However, this innovation has other boring limitations, which are not supposed to be talked about in a decent society for some reason. First, Starlink dishes overheat so much that they cannot work in conditions below -22 degrees Fahrenheit and above +104 degrees Fahrenheit, which cuts off the far south of the USA in summer and the far north in winter. For example, a beta tester in Arizona had to hose his device regularly when it overheated. Here's an example of how cats like to bask on such a dish. And if you have a tree in front of your house, it's also bad, because the connection will be very bad and even the leaves can block the signal. Second, satellite constellations will never be better than ordinary wires in terms of connection quality, only worse. Because, in fact, they take data for transmission from the wired internet. They revolve around it. There are no flying data centers in space. Therefore, a cable connection will always be faster and more reliable, and much cheaper. The real point of paying for Starlink is only for people who don't have wired internet. And this is a very small percentage of the market in the USA and Europe. Third, it is believed that the Musk satellite system has one advantage: its ping. Due to the fact that the satellites fly very low, the ping from Starlink is less than 60 milliseconds. Therefore, the service is promoted as a cool thing for gamers. That's why they need 42,000 satellites to make the ping low. Their satellite competitor HughesNet works perfectly with 20 satellites, covering the entire planet. Viasat has only 4, and this is quite enough. The companies have 2 million customers in America, and the upload-download speed is not worse than that of Starlink. But their satellites are located far away, in an orbit of 22,000 miles. At the speed of light 186,000 miles per second and the need to transfer data back and forth, this gives a minimum ping of 240 milliseconds. In fact, of course, it is much larger, around 630 milliseconds. Starlink's satellites are located just 341 miles from Earth. That's why so many of them are needed, to provide sufficient coverage. But this theoretically allows lowering the ping to 3.7 milliseconds. Now the numbers are much higher, but Musk eventually promises to bring them down to 20 milliseconds. And this promise of his seems quite real. That's what the FCC grant was issued for, low-ping internet in remote regions of the country. However, later the commission said that the project doesn't comply with its standards and in general it is dissatisfied with the technology. But Musk and Shotwell had already received the money by that time. Now playing games via Starlink is not very pleasant because of regular disconnections. But the company promises that when the number of satellites in orbit reaches at least 12,000, interruptions will stop and ping will remain low. Are there so many rich gamers who suffer from ping in remote regions of the planet? This is a question. So far, most of Starlink's customers are residents of megacities like Los Angeles. They just want to try a new technology. For such people, both the ping and the download speed won't reach the figures promised by Musk. The more people connect to one satellite, the slower it works. And since satellites are constantly rotating in orbit, it's impossible to ensure a higher concentration of them in the area of large cities. Fourth, the satellites will revolve around the whole Earth, and not hover over big cities. 71% of the planet is oceans. Europe occupies 2.1% of the surface. The USA is 1.9%. Japan is 0.7%. For remote Viasat or HughesNet satellites, this is not a problem, but Starlink satellites will, in fact, fly over nothing most of the time. only 5% of them will be able to serve their customers. Even now, with the announced 145,000 users, the data transfer rate is suffering. Some users in Los Angeles get the download speed of 36 megabits per second on a good day, while in Seattle, with a much smaller population, the speed is from 165 megabits per second to 50 megabits per second. For comparison, again, Viasat with its 4 satellites gives a stable 12 to 65 megabits per second, depending on the tariff plan. Fifth, the fact that things are bad for the project and it may soon become bankrupt has been said several times by Elon Musk himself. The last time was 6 months ago. He said that they urgently need to get $30 billion. The fall of the company can also bury SpaceX, for which Starlink should become the main client. By the way, this is another point of failure of the entire system. According to Musk's email to employees, they are not yet able to make enough engines for SpaceX ships so that they can launch satellites in the right amount. Basically, there is no money, and it's not clear how to get it. They expect that in order to raise the $30 billion, the company may soon enter an IPO, although it seems a bit paradoxical to offer the general public to invest in a business that is on the verge of bankruptcy and has no opportunity to make a profit in the foreseeable future. But this has never happened, right? Surely the most brilliant person on the planet can't deceive the public like that or not understand simple numbers. But here's a counter question for you. Does anyone else remember about Solar City? In the early 2010s, it was the main project of Elon Musk. Our future. A solar panel roof over every house. A real miracle. A revolution in the power industry. So, it was exactly the same business model. Solar panels were produced at a loss, as well as the dish that costs $500 and its production cost as $1,300. These panels were installed on the homes of all Wishington, and they were recorded in the waiting list. Solar City also didn't work with Musk's money. It actually belonged to Peter and Lyndon Rive, his cousins. They financed themselves with money from the state, having received grants for renewable energy from California and New York State, and they also sold bonds to investors, promising to pay them as soon as cash flow is established. The more people wanted to install the panels, the worse things were going for the company. It also turned out that many bonds were bought through Musk's companies with public money that was intended for other purposes, because by 2015 Musk had already received $4.9 billion from the state for his projects. The production of solar panels was stalled. They were not as effective as the billionaire said, and were often defective. For example, after a number of fires that started because of Solar City panels, Walmart sued them. According to them, damage to the surface of the panels led to the appearance of hot spots that became hotbeds of fire, and the cracks that appeared on the panels were sealed by the employees of Musk's company with the help of duct tape, which then also caught fire. So much for high tech. There were not many real buyers, but even then there were not enough products. In order to somehow finance itself, Solar City entered the stock market in 2012, and it collected several $100 million from a wide range of investors who believe in Elon and his Twitter, despite the constant work at a loss. Then the company floundered for a few more years, and its shares even grew when there was some positive news, until it turned out that it was bankrupt, with debts of $3 billion. The business model didn't work. To save Solar City from bankruptcy, Musk used Tesla's money and bought it out for $2.6 billion. Basically, he bought from himself. Now, for this deal with Solar City, Tesla shareholders are trying to recover $13 billion from Elon Musk, proving that this was outright quackery, and the company, which was bankrupt and had no technology under it, clearly wasn't worth that much. Yeah, okay, maybe he didn't know if the solar panel technology would work. And he promised too much, that happens. But here's an example of obvious and direct deception, so to speak. In 2013, Musk said that Tesla cars will be able to work as robotaxi next year. That will allow the owners to send the car to the street, and it will earn money for them by carrying passengers. A car worth $35,000, according to Musk, should have earned you around $30,000 in a year, even taking into account spending on electricity. That is, the yield is 85% per year. It's basically crazy to buy any other car but a Tesla. The company's shares soon quadrupled, from $8 to $32. According to Musk, this was the main reason to buy a Tesla. No matter how much the car costs, it will bring you even more money in the future. In 2014, at a forum with investors, he again promised that it'll happen next year. In 2016, again, next year. And in 2019. And in 2020. And the other day he promised again that it would definitely happen next year. This has been the case for 9 years in a row. Of course, all this is an empty and cheap lie. If cars could generate $30,000 a year, they wouldn't cost $35,000. Investment funds, companies, taxi companies, everyone would want to get them for themselves. And the price of such cars would rise to a fair $300,000. Such cars would no longer fall into the hands of ordinary buyers. Moreover, why would a company sell such cars that generate 85% per year? If that were really the case, Tesla would just keep them for itself, and it would become the largest taxi company in the world, like a more advanced Uber with its own personal taxi fleet. Musk couldn't help but realize that his figures and words about the future of technology do not correspond to reality at all. But after all, this person is the number one on the planet according to Forbes, by definition, cannot be just a scammer, because engineers work, Tesla electric cars wind millions of kilometers, rockets deliver goods and people, and this video, as they say, by definition cannot be an investment recommendation. Yes, but the tunnels of the Boring Company, built to avoid traffic jams, have traffic jams now. And Cybertruck won't launch until 2023, but all these are minor problems compared to what Starlink promises to become. This is the main project of Elon Musk, which should be sponsored by SpaceX, and should raise enough money to ensure a flight to Mars. Will this project also become the biggest mistake of the main technological visionary of the planet? Maybe all these critical figures and examples do not correspond to reality? It's just the impotent anger of competitors and the schemes of envious people. Let us know what you think about all this in the comments, and rate the video fairly, if you enjoyed watching it. See you on Subversion.